In this problem, we're given several equations and several graphs, and we are to match each of the linear graphs with its equation. I'd like to start with the lines that are increasing as you move left to right, like line D, C, and B. These lines would have a positive slope. It turns out with positive slope, the greater the slope, the greater the steepness. So if you look at the slopes of our lines, the lines that have positive slope would be, this line has a slope of positive 1/2. The line down here has a slope of positive 1. And this equation has a slope of positive 2. So choosing between a slope of 1/2, a slope of 1, and a slope of 2, the slope of 1/2 is the smallest slope, so that would be matched with line D because it's the least steep of the three lines that have positive slope. Then this equation with the slope of 1 would match line C, and this equation that has a slope of 2 would match B because B has the greatest of the three positive slopes. The vertical line A is a special case. Vertical lines have undefined slope, and vertical lines always have the equation x equals a number, that number being the number where the vertical line crosses the x-axis. So this is the equation x equals 0. So x equals 0 would be matched with line A. The horizontal line that passes through 0, green in this picture, is line E. Horizontal lines have a slope of 0, so that would be f of x equals 0, gets matched with line E. With negative slopes, you have to be careful with your language. If we're speaking in terms of absolute value, meaning ignoring the negatives, the larger the slope is in absolute value, the steeper the graph gets. However, because there's so much confusion on this topic, I'd like to move to a different slide now and point out that slope and steepness are not the same thing. So here we're trying to compare the lines F, G, and H, the three lines that are decreasing. They would have negative slopes. If you were to ignore the sign on the slope and just look at the 1/2 and the 1 and the 2, this would be easy to explain. 1/2 is the smallest, so it would have the least steepness. The slope of -1 in absolute value is 1 and is bigger than 1/2, so it would be more steep, and G is more steep than F. And the slope of -2, if you were just looking at its magnitude, meaning the absolute value of -2, would just be the 2, ignore the negative. That would be the largest number in absolute value, so it would be matched with the line H because it is the steepest. What's interesting is if you don't take the absolute values of the slope and you're speaking correctly, technically the black line here that happens to be the line that's steepest of the three actually has the least slope, and that's because their slopes are actually negative. So when I actually write the slope correctly and say that slope is -1/2 and this slope is -1 and this slope is -2, because these are numbers, comparing which is least and greatest actually needs to take place on the real number line. So for example, if I was to plot the number -2 on the real number line and the number -1 and the number -1/2, notice that -2, since it's furthest to the left, is the least of the three. So the slope of -2 is the least slope, but even though it's the least slope, it actually has the greatest steepness. So slope and steepness may not be related exactly how you thought. -1/2 is furthest to the right on the real number line, so this actually is the greatest slope, but even though it has the greatest slope, it gets matched with a line that is least steep. So you may not be comfortable with the language, but it is true. If you were asked between these three lines, which one has the greatest slope and the least slope, technically speaking, the slope of -2, the line that's steepest, actually has the least slope. And then of these three lines, the slope of -1/2, the line that has the least steepness, actually has the greatest slope, again because -1/2 is furthest to the right of these three numbers on the real number line. -1/2 is bigger than -1 and it is bigger than -2. So slope of -1/2 is the greatest slope of these three.